Hello, History and Heritage Explorers. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is probably the most famous house address in the world. It is the White House, home of the President of the United States of America and their family since John Adams, the second president, and his wife Abigail moved in 1800. People claim that some of the residents and other unwanted guests have never moved out and still walk the halls, rooms, and grounds as ghosts. So sit back and let's enjoy the haunted White House. John and Abigail Adams had moved into the new Capitol and the White House from the former Capitol in Philadelphia. During this early period, D.C. hadn't been developed into the city that it is now. The Capitol was still a small town that was built on the banks of the Potomac River, and because of this proximity to the river and the swampy land on which D.C. was built, the Capitol was humid. Due to this humidity, Abigail Adams needed to find a place in the White House that was warm and dry to hang up the damp laundry. She found that place in the East Room of the White House and used it as a makeshift laundry room. The First Lady must have loved cleaning the clothes, as if even in her death she is said to still be drying the clothes in that room. Wearing a lace cloak and cap, the ghost of Abigail Adams has been sighted drifting towards the East Room, which is the largest room in the White House. In these sightings, her ghostly arms are held out, as if though bringing in the invisible laundry basket into the room to dry. To this day, the White House staff sometimes smell lavender and wet laundry by or inside of the East Room. Abigail Adams isn't the only ex-First Lady walking the White House grounds. Dolly Madison seems to have chosen a better eternal pastime. She takes care of the garden. During the Woodrow Wilson administration, staff members reported seeing her ghost as they were about to move the rose garden. Workmen said that Dolly Madison's ghost appeared in the garden and ran them off, keeping them from doing their job. Hanging laundry or tending to the rose garden aren't the only activities continued in the afterlife at the White House. One First Lady is still in mourning. On January the 6th of 1853, just weeks before his inauguration, newly elected Franklin Pierce, his wife Jane, and son were passengers on a train that derailed. This accident resulted in the single fatality, that of the beloved son, Benny. Broken by grief and refusing her obligations as First Lady, Jane moved into the White House and took up in her room on the second floor, spending her time writing letters to Benny, pleading with the boy to return to her from beyond the grave. According to her letters, he did. Mrs. Pierce had hired several clairvoyants after Benny's death and held seances. Afterwards, Miss Pierce wrote a letter to her sister explaining that Benny visited her 2 nights in a row in her dreams. Some have claimed that they would sometimes hear the mournful sobbing of Miss Pierce in the upstairs halls, pleading for young Benny's return. The wives of the presidents are not the only ghosts roaming the halls of the White House. The middle child of President and Mrs. Lincoln, Willie Lincoln, was said to be a friendly, happy child. He was also the son who was closest to Abraham. Willie and his younger brother Tad both became extremely ill in February of 1862 with typhoid fever. Tad got better, but young Willie passed away on February the 20th of 1862 in the guest room upstairs, which is now used as the private dining room for the first family. Willie's body was taken downstairs into the green room, where it was laid out for viewing. The green room was Mrs. Lincoln's favorite room until this point. In 1861, she had redecorated and was very proud of her creation. Devastated by the loss of young Willie, Mrs. Lincoln came to view her son's body only once, and she did not attend his funeral, and she never went into the green room again. At the time of Willie Lincoln's death, spiritualism was gaining popularity in the United States, and Mrs. Lincoln participated in several seances. Shortly after she attended one of these seances, she began to talk to her son Willie. She told friends that Willie would come and stand at the foot of her bed in the middle of the night and stare at her. In the 1870s, a member of Ulysses S. Grant's staff reported that he had a conversation with the ghost of Willie Lincoln, and members of the Grant administration also said that his ghost was spotted throughout the White House from time to time, running across the halls and into the rooms. At an event at the White House in the 1950s, the young daughter of a Belgian ambassador was seen playing peekaboo with an unseen playmate. When her parents asked her what she was doing, she explained that she was playing with a young boy. She described him in great detail, but there were no children present at this event. A few days later, while at the Smithsonian, she pointed to a picture of a boy and told her parents that that is who she was playing and talking with at the White House. It was a picture of Willie Lincoln. Another ghostly boy that is said to roam the halls of the White House is known as the Thing. This spirit was first documented by Major Archibald Butt, who had wrote to his sister Clara this: "It seems that the White House is haunted. The ghost, it seems, is a young boy. From its description, I should think about 14 or 15 years old. They say that the first knowledge one has of its presence of the Thing is a slight pressure on the shoulder, as if someone is leaning over your shoulder to see what you might be doing." The ghost of the Thing is reported to have blonde hair and big, sad blue eyes. Major Butt repeated the staff's gossip about the Thing to the President, President Taft. The President ordered Major Butt to tell the White House staff that the first member to repeat this story about the Thing would be fired. Major Butt was said to be investigating who the Thing might be. He didn't get a chance to reveal who, because on April the 14th, 1912, Major Butt was a passenger on board the ship Titanic. During the War of 1812, the White House was set ablaze by the British Army in the burning of Washington. This fire destroyed the interior and charred much of the exterior walls. After the war, the mansion was repaired and the building was whitewashed to conceal the damage. An unnamed British soldier who perished at the White House during the War of 1812 still roams the White House grounds holding a torch. One incident was reported a few years later after the Truman-era restoration, where the spirit was seen in one of the rooms trying to set a bed on fire. The spirits of some of the presidents are also some of the ghostly guests of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who seem to have hung around long after their terms have ended. The 9th president, William Henry Harrison, haunts the attic, which is now the 3rd floor. He was the first president to die in the White House after serving only 32 days in that office. John Tyler, the 10th president, haunts the Blue Room. He has been seen on his knee with his arm raised up, proposing to Julia Gardner, his second wife. In June 1945, President Truman wrote to his wife Bess about life in the White House during his first months of his term. "I sit here in this old house and I work on foreign affairs, read reports, and work on speeches, all while listening to the ghost walk up and down the hallways and even right here in the study," he wrote to her. "The floors pop, the drapes move back and forth. I can just imagine old Andy and Teddy having an argument over Franklin." In late 1946, he wrote Bess another letter after he heard a knock on his bedroom door, but no one was there. "I jumped up and put on my bathrobe, opened the door, and no one was there," he wrote. "I went out and looked up and down the hallway, looked in your room, looked in Margie's. Still no one. Went back to bed after locking the doors, and there were footsteps in your room whose door I had left open. I jumped up and looked. No one was there. This place is haunted, sure as shooting. Secret Service said that not even watchmen was up here at that hour. You and Margie had better come back and protect me before these ghosts come and carry me off." It seems President Truman went from complaining about ghosts to joining them. Truman loved playing the piano, and his is still at the White House. President George W. Bush's daughter, Jenna Barbara, heard on several occasions 1920s piano music coming out of the fireplace in their bedroom when no one was listening to or playing one at the time. President Truman isn't the only ghost with a musical ear. Thomas Jefferson plays his violin in the Yellow Oval Room many years after he left this world. In 1824, John Quincy Adams defeated Andrew Jackson in one of the most heated presidential elections in history. Andrew was elected president 4 years later, but continued to hold grudges against those who had supported his opponent. In the early 1960s, the First Lady, Mary Todd Lincoln, reportedly held seances in the White House to commune with the spirits of her dead sons. Mary told friends that she had heard Jackson stomping around and swearing through the walls at the president's residence. The Rose Room, Jackson's bedchambers, while he was president, is believed by some to be one of the most haunted rooms in the White House. Perhaps the most famous visitor of the White House from the afterlife is the 16th President Abraham Lincoln. The first to admit seeing Lincoln's ghost was Grace Coolidge, the First Lady to President Calvin Coolidge, who was the president from 1923 to 1929. Grace described Lincoln's ghost standing in the Lincoln bedroom, which used to be his office. The ghost stared out of a window, the window that faced Virginia. His ghost disappeared, leaving the drapes swaying back and forth. Was the ghost of Lincoln still agonizing over the battles taking place just miles away? The reports of Lincoln's ghost rose during the Franklin D. Roosevelt administration, which ran from 1933 to 1945. During this time, the United States was going through some societal changes as well as World War II. Was this the reason why Lincoln was appearing more at the White House? Sightings of President Lincoln's ghost are not limited to those who live at the White House. Visiting guests have also had their experiences with the former president's ghost. In 1940, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was visiting the White House during the Second World War. He also was startled by President Lincoln's spirit. Late one night, Churchill took a bath. After finishing, and he was still nude, he walked out of the bathroom into the bedroom. Sitting next to the fireplace was the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. In his charismatic wit, Churchill remarked, "Why, Mr. President, you have me at a disadvantage." 2 years later, in the middle of the night, in the same guest suite where Churchill had stayed, Queen Wilhelmina of Holland heard a knock at the bedroom door. When she opened it, there stood in front of her, with his top hat and all, was the ghost of President Abraham Lincoln. The Queen fainted. Former First Ladies Jacqueline Kennedy and Lady Bird Johnson both said that they encountered Abraham Lincoln's spirit as well. And in 1989, President Ronald Reagan had candidly told the people that he was talking to that there was a room in the White House that his dog had refused to go into. It was the Lincoln bedroom. Abraham Lincoln's spirit seems to appear at times of stress and national crisis. It seems that even after his death, Lincoln strives to help guide this country through its great perils, like he did in life. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe, and please share this video with friends and family. Thank you from the History and Heritage Explorers.